We're going to have them up here for a few moments here to answer some questions directly from the audience. And as I mentioned before, they'll be hanging around afterwards in kind of our extended session. So without further ado, if I see Mike's up there, one over there.
Ben and Senator Hammond, thanks for being here today. Joseph Cortez, Georgia Outreach Director for Students First. I want to ask specifically the Senator, as you know, the work on ESAs is very important, but we can't just stop there. And we can't just stop with choice. We have to improve the system so they work better for students and children. So my question is simple. What's next? What's next for you in Nevada, and what do you think is next on the horizon for the ed reform movement in general?
It is on? Okay. Joseph, right? Thank you very much for the question. And actually, it's a really good question. You know, somebody the other day asked the question of another panelist. I was on a panel and they said, well, who's the next state to probably pass ESAs? I thought the question was pretty good. I think it was Neil McCluskey, actually, who answered. He said, you know, I look around and kind of, you know, test the air and see what's going on in the states right now, and he wasn't sure who. And so the question, the answer I think is, I'm not sure what's out there. For me, it's about putting in those pieces that I think were important, going back in and looking at the higher ed question on my bill. But also, you know, there are some in Nevada who still are not happy, and believe it or not, those people in private schools. One of the things I was not able to do is wrap up everybody in the private school in this bill, only because in Nevada, just like many other states, what happens is if you remove your child from public education, we no longer budget for them. And so in order for us to have thrust all those current private school students into the mix, it would have cost us about $250 million. And we just didn't have the money nor the stomach to raise more taxes to do that, because that was, you know, our session was the session of taxes, actually. And so, you know, one of the things I'd like to see is we start to include them. And I think it was mentioned by Ben here that, you know, maybe they don't get the whole 90%, but maybe we start them off slower and then move them up. For me, I also think what's critical is the regulations that we're passing. You know, one of the regulations that I think is paramount that we do, that the Treasurer's Office puts into the program itself, and I hope most people do this, because it'll put you on a pathway to 100% of the population being involved in a school choice program, and that is that they need to include, you know, what I put a provision in the original bill that said that if you are in public school and it's required, then you have to get out of public school, get in, or I'm sorry, if you're in private school, and yet the grade that you're in is required, and I'm paraphrasing and do a horrible job at it. Put it this way: in Nevada, you have to go to school if you're 7 years or older, first grade and up. And so if you're in a private school and you're 7 years or older, then you have to go back to a public school for 100 days to get back out, then you'll be eligible for an ESA. Well, the reason why I put it in there is I wanted to make sure that if you were younger than 7, you're kindergarten age, that you would be eligible automatically for an ESA, regardless of whether or not your siblings went to a private school or anything like that. I think that all kinder-aged children should have access to an ESA, because what does that do? It puts us on a pathway that 100% of our kids will then be eligible for an ESA within 13 years or less, you know, according to what we do in the near future. But it really is, I think, one of the things I need to go after are some of my colleagues on the other side of the aisle and say to them, there are people in private school right now who are barely in private school. They've taken out loans. They've done everything they could, second jobs, third jobs, just barely making it. We need to means test it for them. Maybe start them off at maybe 25, 30% of the DSA, kind of give them a break, and then roll it up as we go along as well. So that's some of the things I'll be working on in the near future in Nevada. Elsewhere, I do this right here because I think you know, we've got to inspire more and more states to know that it's time to push the pedal. You know, some people have been talking. I talked to a lieutenant governor the other day in a state, and the advice that he got from some people is maybe you ought to start small, like they did in Arizona and Florida. And after listening to me, you know, for 30 minutes on the phone with him, he said, "Well, that's just not my style. I'm not going to do it. I mean, why are we going to bust down all these walls and have people get bloodied up busting all these walls down if we're going to just slow play this and kind of go backwards? No, I'm going to go for the whole thing." School choice is about making sure everybody is eligible to wrap services around their kids. So I think what we're doing in the future is making sure somebody comes up with a program that's appropriate for their state.
Thank you very much. Janice Van Ness. And my question is, so let's say that I was a Democratic senator and I was going to say, what's, in a devil's advocate here, what happens to all the children who take, let's say, a $4,500 voucher and can't afford private school? Are they all left in public school together with no opportunity for options?
I think there's going to be a lot of options at 4,500 by people like the people that spoke before us. I think those options will be created. They don't exist now, but I think they will exist if that opportunity was available.
And if I could add to that, right before I even passed legislation, I had a few meetings, 2 of them as a matter of fact, with individuals who said, look, if you can pass this, we're bringing a school and we're going to do it, and we're going to put it right in the middle of East Las Vegas, which is predominantly minority and predominantly low achieving. And their goal, and this is where, again, this is where liberals and conservatives can come together, because it's education. So this group that I was talking to had more of a liberal mindset. They're there to educate the kids who, in their minds, need it the most, the ones that are neglected the most. And so that's where I see that this movement is going forward. Maybe 20, 25 years ago, when people said school choice, everybody kept thinking, oh, it's just, the rich people want more money. They want to cut the money so they don't have to pay out of their pocket. Whatever that was 20 years ago, I'm telling you right now, the mindset is I think both minds, liberals and conservatives, can come together on this issue and say, look, technology is changing the way we can deliver education, and we can deliver it to those who are the most needy, right? We can get to them. And so I think you're going to see a huge change, at least in our Las Vegas and then Reno and some other areas in Nevada. You're going to see that change because there are groups who want to come in there and make a change. And technology, I mean, if anything needs to be changed, it's education. I think it's the last industry if you looked 150 years ago, if you went back 150 years, you would see almost the same thing that you see today. And so we need to change. We need to, find ways of delivering that's better.